Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which is standing one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. It's a thing where it's like you're like that.
I'm gonna be okay.
Here, come on. First, or-
All right. I'm gonna bounce out of the agenda just for a second. Those of you who were present at the previous meeting, our workshop, if there was anybody that had, comments that they would like to make, general, discussion comments, open the floor up. Recognize anybody? Yes.
Hi, my name is Catherine Murray, and there were a couple of things that, came up, and I think you guys are doing a great job of looking into the future, and I think that that's, something that's definitely needed. I'm really in favor of the idea of looking at doing an impact fee study. I think that, new development and, in our community, it's a nice opportunity to raise money, but it's also, our ability to, this is the best place ever to live. And then people should be able to, benefit from it, but also pay for it, especially with these large, developments, these large houses that are coming in here, and our roads, our infrastructure, our sewer, our stormwater, our gardens, and our public spaces. I don't know if we have a level of service that we look for within our community, but that's very often, something that is associated with impact fees. So keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, we'll proceed with our commission meeting agenda at this point then. Update on the town's financial account.
Thank you, Mayor. I have Yvonne Claiborne, who is our financial director, or finance director through CRI. She's going to give a brief overview to the commission. I think it's important. They have been with us since October 2024. And she's going to talk about what we've inherited and how far we've taken and what our next steps are.
Hello. Good evening.
Sure.
All right, so our financial operations update. So just a quick overview. Right, and quick.
Turn it on the side.
Ah. There you go. So we're gonna talk about, first, let's talk a little bit about internal control over financial operations. So what is internal control? That process that protects the assets of the entity. So we're talking about financial reporting, your assets, your accounting records. So whether it's a physical loss of assets or not, at the end of the day, in order to obfuscate any kind of loss of assets, to do that with malintent, you have to use the accounting records to cover it up. So at the end of the day, internal controls are in place to make sure that there's no material misstatement of those financial accounting records. So what is your role? So there we go. All right, so the oversight. So you sitting here on the dais, you provide that oversight. So it's ideally a monitoring situation where you're not having to develop those, you're not having to get in the weeds, so to speak. But you're gonna oversee that design. Management's gonna come to you and say, here's the design of the control environment that we wish to go forth with. You're gonna have that risk assessment. Management's gonna say, this is where we see the risks for the town and how we're going to address them. These are the control activities, because you're never gonna be able to protect 100%. It's just not gonna be cost effective. So you look at the cost benefit of every control, and then you provide that maximum that you can, with the most bang for your buck. You're gonna provide that information and communication to the oversight body, and then your role is to make sure that it's monitored. Ask the tough questions. It goes back to that old see something, say something. You see something that doesn't make sense, and, ask those questions, scrutinize what's being done. The decisions that management's coming forward to you and saying, we were making this recommendation. If there's something that raises a question in your mind, that's your opportunity and your responsibility. Ask that question to make sure that what we bring forth as management to you makes the most sense for the town. So that is your role in this process. So what did we inherit? I'm really bad with this clicker. Okay, so September 24, we started having discussions. Originally, what was going to happen was the prior accounting firm was going to take the fiscal year 24 financial statements through the audit process, and we were going to start on October 1. That did not happen. We ended up taking over a little bit early and having to manage the audit process as well. So what was happening? Reconciliations, bank reconciliations, at the end of the day, cash is king. Whether it's money that's being ACH'd into your account or it's cash collected on site and then deposited into the bank. Timely reconciliations are they're a paramount pillar in internal control. The October 23 and November 23 refunds were completed 3 or 4 months after month end. When we were first having negotiations with the town to come on board, the December 23 through August 24 reconciliations were not completed at all. On or around September 23rd, 24, Those reconciliations were completed, and then the September 24th reconciliation completed until December 20th, 2024. Should be noted that our firm actually ended up completing it within the town's prior accounting system, just in order to facilitate the migration into the current accounting system. In the chart of accounts, there was heavy use of individual account numbers rather than using subsidiary ledgers to track activity. For instance, your accounts receivable, you have a receivable account number for every type of receivable coming from the state, coming from building permits, coming from this. So you have multiple receivables, rather than having a receivable subsidiary ledger that fed up to one or two line items in your general ledger. Same thing with prepaid items. There was an individual account for pretty much every prepaid item. Payroll was the same way. There was a position of payroll expenditure account for police chief. There was a payroll expenditure account for the officers. There was a payroll expenditure account for each line item, which in and of itself doesn't seem like a challenge, other than when you get a really large chart of accounts, which is what you end up having here. You introduce more opportunity for error, for transactions to be coded incorrectly, and it's not providing you the kind of management advice that you need from summarized information. It's easy to say, this is how much payroll is costing us, and from a budgetary standpoint, we can give you that detail using subsidiary ledgers, but that having that visibility at the account number level is not really necessary, and it really just, again, introduces that opportunity for error. There was the excessive use of other or miscellaneous accounts, where typically we used to, learn with our accounting classes that the other expense account or the miscellaneous expense account should never be the largest item on your profit and loss statement. In this account, that was the case. The thing that stood out to us is you had excessive bank charges. We were trying to figure out what in the world was happening to your bank charges accounts. We've never seen anything like that in a town of any size. And it turned out that 100% of the credit card payments were being coded to bank charges rather than the individual accounts. So whether it was for travel or for supply purchases or equipment purchases, it was hitting bank charges. And it was something that hadn't been identified in your previous audits. Okay. So, and again, the officer of the inspector general had even commented on the fact that the chart of accounts was excessive. So just kind of as a visual, this is from your old accounting system. It's really small print and it's 7 pages and it just goes on and on and on and on. It was about, I'm going to say about 480 accounts. When we took over, this is bigger font and it's 5 pages and it's about 200, less than 250 accounts. So we eliminated a lot of the miscellaneous accounts. We consolidated to payroll accounts, and then we used subsidiary information to provide that detail that you need if it's so needed. And the subsidiaries ledgers are operating as they're intended. But again, that was a large chunk of what we did in order to help provide that cleanup.
You started the presentation with what you inherited, and if you had to describe it with one word, what would it be?
One word.
One word.
Can I use a hyphenated word?
Yes.
Overly complex.
How about a mess?
Good.
I'm gonna say it's overly complex. It took a lot to find an answer to a question. Rather than, it should be very simple. Okay, journal entries. I'm not gonna stand up here on this podium and say that there was no review of journal entries. What I'm gonna say is there's no documentation of review of journal entries. As a former auditor, I can tell you that if there is no documentation of review, it doesn't exist under professional standards. It's considered, it doesn't exist. You can't tell us, oh yeah, well, I reviewed that. An auditor we can't rely on that. So policies and procedures that were outdated or missing policies and procedures, IT policies and procedures, such that they were not compliant with what I would consider best practices. And then you had policies that were outright not being followed. Coding and classification, there was inconsistent and or incorrect coding of transactions, which again led to that complexity. And when we were trying to research what was going on and coming up with the fiscal year we were working on the fiscal year 26 budget and still trying to figure out what was happening. I mean, I think the fiscal year 26 budget took us twice as long as it should have, because we were still trying to figure out where some of these things had been. When you try to look at a financial trend, we were still trying to figure out where some of this stuff was coming from. And then there was just plain a lack of supporting documentation. One of the biggest things that is a problem, should have been a problem for your auditors, it should be a problem for you, is there are payments being made from vendor statements rather than invoices or receipts. The biggest culprit of that was dry cleaning. That's the first bill we tackled. We started refusing to pay the dry cleaning bill from the statement, saying you have to provide us the receipts. If we're gonna recommend to the town that you cut a check, we wanna make sure that that dry cleaning has a public purpose.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
That wasn't my plan. For the layperson, you're not paying for my dry cleaning. It's police officer uniforms. This is standard. I just wanted to make sure we were all clear about that.
From the statement, it just says dry cleaning. So we wanted receipts because again, for your public record, we want those receipts showing it was for police uniforms. We know that there's dry cleaning bills that get paid and they have a public purpose. We just wanted to make sure the receipts are in your accounting records that support that public purpose for that. Okay, so what did we do? Okay. As we discussed, the first thing we did was start working on knocking down the number of accounts. We did that as part of the transition to the new accounting software. We had to run a crosswalk back from, we had these 480 accounts down to less than 200 accounts. And then we introduced subsidiary ledgers. The subsidiary ledgers, my team does a monthly reconciliation of those subsidiary ledgers, whether it's your receivables or your prepaids or your accounts payable. Those subsidiary ledgers, we have a binder that walks through those reconciliations. Somebody else on my team will prepare that reconciliation and then it gets reviewed by either one of our managers, Keith or Brandy, or myself. So that you always have a preparer independent of the reviewer. So no, I can't go in, if I do a reconciliation one month and like I might step in and say, I'm gonna do the reconciliation for the prepaids. Brandy or Keith will go in and review modular. It's just, that's our quality control process. But again, that's our way of making sure that if somebody asks me a question about those subsidiary ledgers, we have those answers. Heidi all but prohibited the use of other or miscellaneous accounts, which was tricky when we were budgeting. Yeah, I think we have one. So we've either greatly reduced or eliminated the use of miscellaneous or other accounts. We have an enhanced segregation of duties between receiving, recording, and depositing funds. All the handling of cash happens, what cash does come in happens with the town personnel. That way the group that's doing the accounting, which is my group, we have no access to the cash. There's no way for us to take the cash and then cover it up with an accounting transaction because we never have access to the cash. So we have other ways of identifying controls in place at the town. We can reconcile, one of the things we're doing is reconciling building permits to building permit revenue. So we know when a building permit is been issued, we can reconcile it to the deposit that makes it into the bank. We also have independent review of bank reconciliations. Again, one of my team members prepares the bank reconciliation, and it always has a second person reviewing. Okay. The other thing we did with cash disbursements is required all vendors to provide a W-9 before we pay the vendor. There's a couple of reasons for this, not the least of which when you're trying to comply with federal laws and provide the 1099s, if you don't have those W-9s, it's actually at your peril for not having those, and the penalties for not filing 1099s properly keeps increasing. So again, that is our policy. We will simply say, when they introduce a new vendor, we said, we'll work with the town to get that W-9 on file. We no longer pay employee reimbursements through check. We make those employee reimbursements through payroll. reimbursement requests go through an approval process at the town, either department head and or the town manager approves the reimbursement request, and then it comes to us. We look at it again. We do a second look to make sure it doesn't get paid unless we see the proper approvals. And we're gonna review it for supporting documentation and compliance with town policies, and as Jackie's will attest, I will question it. If I just, it's not to be me, I'm just making sure I understand, and then we add notes to it on the file, so that if somebody says, hey, wait a minute, why did we reimburse for this? We have notes on file and say, yes, we checked it, it's in compliance with the town policies, it's in compliance with city statutes. Again, we're that last stop to make sure that, the town's assets are safeguarded. Dual authorization, all payments are reviewed by department head and or the town manager, and then we review it again for supporting documentation and compliance with town policies. Okay, we make all our vendor payments through bill.com. Vendor invoices are uploaded through a document processing website called HubDoc. HubDoc then brings that into the accounting software, and then it goes into bill.com. So the documentation of the approval by the document head or the town manager is captured electronically in bill.com. There's enhanced security and protection of the town assets. The most common fraud scheme going through municipalities right now in Florida and probably everywhere is check washing. If you don't know what that is, but basically this eliminates, so most banks require that you have what they call positive pay. If you're using bill.com, you don't have to have positive pay, because say you pay $50,000 worth of vendor payments, bill.com comes and takes $50,000 through ACH directly from your account. Those payments are made to the vendors by bill.com on their bank account, or their ACH, or they have something called a virtual card. And the vendor chooses how they want to be paid. But that check that comes to a vendor that chooses to be paid by check is on bill.com's account, not yours, so you don't have to worry about positive pay or fraud. Receipts are reconciled to vendor statements. Again, just like we were talking about with the dry cleaning, we're gonna look, when we see the vendor statements, we're gonna look to make sure those invoices are in there. And we don't allow for payments being made just from the vendor statement. And those invoices are actually attached within the accounting software. So at any point in time, the town management that has access to read what's in the general ledger can open it up and say, you know, I paid abc.com, and I go in there and they can go and click on that bill and it'll bring them right to that invoice, which is attached to that payment. And they can see the invoice for ABC and it's like, oh yeah. And then they can say, great job, CRI, or they can say, hey, wait, you guys posted it to the wrong account. I need this to go into this, account, not the other, and we can fix it. And it's an easy fix. But again, those vendor invoices are attached. It makes it super easy for anybody to look at it and get a history on something, but it also makes it super easy when the auditors come in and say, they select 25 transactions, they want to see the invoices, we can go right to the transaction, pull the attachment. We don't have to dig through a paper file. We use a payroll processor, in this case, Payworks. So there's a separation of payroll processing, approval, and distribution. It provides for restricted access to the payroll system and personnel records. There's regular reconciliation of payroll to the general ledger. There's procedures for handling changes in pay rates, job status, and benefits. And Payworks also provides monitoring of overtime and leave balances through reports that can be generated from the system. All right, what else did we done? We've made those corrections, and all these updates were all being made while we were trying to keep up with continuing operations. Yes, there was a little bit of a lag as we were trying to get through the September 24, the fiscal year 24 audit. But for the most part, we're running about 30 days from the time we close the month and getting a report out to the commission. We've made improvements to the budgeting process to try to provide for better visibility, which means better use of that budget as a guide. And again, the budget is just a forecast of what we think we'll need. We are aware that it's not going to be 100%, and we're going to provide for that regular monitoring of that actual versus budget. You're going to get those reports and have that. That's going to provide for more timely identification of budget amendments if they're needed. Again, the state gives you 60 days after year end to make any last final budget amendments. Right now, we only make budget amendments annually, but, you know, at some point, if we had to make a big budget amendment, we could do that because we have that information regularly available to us. With that, I'll entertain any questions.
I had a question.
Yes,
Ideally, how long does the process take to have the vendors paid? All those steps.
so we pay payables every other week. So payroll runs 1 week and then the next week we'll run the AP check. So everything that's in the system, if we have it from the vendor, as long as we have all the supporting documentations, we should have it paid. So everybody should get paid within, 30 days should be the most. I will tell you, as we were cleaning up for this audit, I will tell you, we found one where that vendor statement never came in. It's one of the ones where we get a paper statement from the vendor. It just nobody ever got it. And it just kept, but they never asked for it, but we identified it as we were going through and doing the reconciliations, getting prepared for the fiscal year 25 audit. So it's unusual for it to go more than 30 days. Under state law, unless a bill is contested or it's construction related, you have 45 days to pay a vendor under the Prompt Payment Act. So our goal is to have everything paid within 30 days so that we're always in compliance with the 45-day law.
Can I ask a question? It's obvious the discrepancies that have occurred. They've been documented. Is your scope of services going to ensure us that can't happen again?
That's the dream. The dream is that.
Not a dream.
Yeah, but that's our goal when we provide that information, and again, that's why we review our financial. It's not to say that we don't make mistakes, we occasionally will code something incorrect. But because we give it to Heidi time for the review of the code with council, I'm gonna say 98, 99% of those coding, anything that might get past us gets caught in management. So the discrepancies in terms of payments for things that are not in compliance with statute should not happen.
Does your scope of work include operational validation that we're living up to the policies, checks and balances, and go randomly through different codes to see that we follow the rules?
No, not from a code compliance standpoint, because that accounting doesn't cover all of that code compliance. If we see something that we knowingly violates Florida statutes, we will flag it. But it's up to management to make sure that the transactions that are entered to are in compliance with Florida statutes. So we would only flag it if we saw something, and we obviously, because we're not lawyers and we're just accountants.
Mayor,
But in fairness,
Mhm.
as much as we trust our management,
Mhm.
we have to validate that the process in which they approve something was followed.
That we
Got to them.
Yeah, so we are watching for we're not gonna pay a bill that hasn't been through the approval process. So if there is, let me think of a good example. If there is a purchase, say there's a purchase at Walmart for supplies. If it comes in and it's approved by the department head and or the town manager, and it comes to us to be paid. So maybe it's through the credit card, unless we see like they're buying beauty products on the receipt, we happen to see that. We're going to say if it looks like they are actually buying supplies, so they needed something for a commission meeting, they bought.
But how many of those cost codes do you look at? Because obviously payroll was a big issue.
Mhm,
And you've got a great lessons learned is what was wrong.
mhm.
And you feel confident that what you're putting in place or responsibility, that this can't happen again.
Right, so we are comfortable that the process we have in place, that there are not going to be any more, what I would call significant or material malfeasance in terms of improper expenditures with what we have.
Yvonne,
Are
what
we
happens,
Gonna get through? Yes.
I think what Mr. Gilbane is going at, Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
is what happens when there is a Walmart receipt and it is only for RV and beauty supplies? And I tell you it's okay. What are you going to do, Yvonne?
I'm going to question it and elevate it. So if Heidi tells me it's okay, I may take the next step and contact governments.
And what is that next step? Spell it out for the commission. You and I have talked
It
about
would be
this.
contacting the mayor first. The first step would be to contact, because I have to go one level above the person that made the approval. So it would be to the mayor.
Okay.
And he may or may not direct me to the town manager. Town attorney. I can't go directly, I wouldn't go directly to the town attorney, unless I was directed to.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think that covered Bill's question very well. Thank you. So I let it go on. I do have one question in relation to us.
Can't hear you. Yeah.
Am I off again?
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. All right, there we go. Thanks. Shouldn't realize you're trying to do. The question for us, we get the monthly statement, so to speak, for us to review before we have our commission meetings.
Yes.
It's basically 6 weeks old. I see that you're looking at it as a 30-day time frame, but obviously that makes it sound like it's an end of the month. And therefore, when we have our meeting, it's gonna end up being 30 days plus the 2 weeks, we're second week of the month. So that's really why we're always gonna be about 6 weeks behind. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
But all the reconciliations are done within that 30-day time frame. So the accounting work is done within that 30-day time frame, and then the financial reporting, there's a lag.
Right, okay,
Because of us getting the agenda out now to you earlier than before.
right. Okay, very good. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Yvonne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the tremendous amount of work you've had to go through over the last year and a half. Looks like we're basically getting there, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on. Heidi, town manager report.
Yes, I'll just have a quick update. We talked about the resilience action plan at the previous meeting. I want to share with the public that we anticipate doing a summer webinar to talk about the adaptation plan, which is basically the project list that we talked about, the second part. Because so many of our residents will be out of town at that time, we're gonna do it just as a webinar, so it's easier to manage and that everyone has an opportunity to participate. So once that's scheduled, we'll get that information out, and that's gonna help dictate those grants and other projects that we're gonna do from a resiliency standpoint. Our budget remains on track. By next month, you will see the building permit revenue increase. In the month of March, we collected at least one project that had about $100,000 more. So it looks like we're lagging behind in building permit revenue. We've caught up now. And then we just received another large check within this week. Yeah, this week we received another check, so that's for April. So you will see that catch up happen real fast. We're at 35% of our expenditures at 42% of the fiscal year. And finally, I've been communicating with the commission on the Jupiter Inlet District and some of the work that they're doing. You saw that Palm Beach County sent a letter of concern to the district. I know, as I stated in our earlier meeting, it's going to be very hard to get them to go outside of their sand trap management plan, even if they do work in the Ebbs Shoal. But I was wondering if it would be okay by the commission if I send them a letter saying that we are interested at being at the table and part of discussions and start taking those positive steps that we talked about when their executive director was here. But before I speak on behalf of the town, I need the commission's okay.
I think Mark, you start.
You don't need to turn these mics off.
They went off.
Oh, okay. That-
Mark, I think you kind of started this, your last commission meeting, that we wanted to try to get more involved over there. Everybody, I think, is going to head out in that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll keep you informed.
Please.
And it's my intention, if not to attend those meetings in person, at least virtually. That's all I have for mine. Kelly's gonna come up with a brief, update from the legislative session, and that will be followed by, the town engineer, Bert King, to talk about Lighthouse Drive. Thank you.
Good evening. Good to see you all and so many members of the public from the community. The good news is my legislative update is extremely short and it's good news. The good news is that nothing definitive happened on property taxes in the 60-day regular session, as I sent you in my email update. The even better news is that there was talk of them being in special session this very week, and I would have been in a car tomorrow morning, but I don't now have to be in a car in the morning. No, nothing happening this week. The even better news to that, to keep layering on, is that next week, you may remember from my February presentation, was a previously called special session by the governor for the purpose of redistricting. The good news there is that the US Supreme Court ruling that was going to be the justification for that special session has not dropped. So that ruling puts the governor in a situation of, how do I defend something when we're ahead of our skis and there's not a reason for us to come into compliance with something that has not yet been released from the Supreme Court? So little by little, what I'm trying to paint for you is this diluting, essentially, a diluting effect that maybe we get through April, then maybe we get through May and they're just dealing with a straight state budget that they didn't finish, which was their only constitutional duty in the 60 days. So that, all of you alluded to this and Heidi did as well. I know she said, I think more than once, we just don't know when it comes to the budget, when it comes to ad valorem. So plan for the worst, hope for the best, but I'll say your planning for the worst is working. So if you're praying, please keep it going. And if we can get through April, I would say by the end of April, the odds are looking better that we're probably just dealing with a straight state budget. The closer we get to the state fiscal year, which starts July 1, and local governments depend on the state hitting their deadline July 1, so that you can then produce what you need to produce after in August and September and put it into effect in October. So that is my property tax reform update, short and sweet. My next legislative update is a special honor. Heidi asked me to go ahead and cover something that we were looking forward to from the Florida League of Cities at the end of the 60-day session, and that is this. We have not one, but two home rule heroes in the audience and on the dais tonight. Commissioner Dave Shula was named by the Florida League of Cities as a home rule hero for his testimony in his in-depth meeting with the Florida League of Cities a few months ago in Tallahassee. Thank you again for making the trip. It is a long drive. If you've never done that drive, I urge you to try it once. And then you'll know why there's more lobbyists than members of the public in Tallahassee all the time for session. So we think July, there will be a local celebration. We'll let you all know about that. Our second home rule hero is Town Manager Heidi Sinkel. There are not many, I want to tell you, she'll shoot me later, but there are not many town managers and town staff on these lists. Let me give you the raw data. In 2025, there were 190 individuals awarded with this award from across the entire state. Okay, 190. So if you think about that in context, there are 411 municipalities times usually 5 people on the dais as elected officials. That's almost 2,500 individuals. So you are in rarefied company, you too. So in 2025, there were 190 individuals so honored. In 2026, it will be 220 for a 14% increase. In 2025, those 100 individuals came from 126 municipalities. As I mentioned before, that's out of 411, that's about a quarter of all municipalities operating in this award meaningful way. In 2026, that increased from 126 municipalities to 143. So likewise, low double digits increase. However, those numbers really don't tell the story because Heidi will tell you, because we were in these rooms together. Every time there was a League of Cities meeting this past calendar, or this past 12 months, it was, you almost to a meeting said, this is a record-setting attendance today. So the fact that a community as small as and nimble as Jupiter Inlet Colony is participating in those kinds of conversations, clearly with these awards being given, and I'm making a little bit of a big deal of this for a lot of reasons. There are a lot of resources at the Florida League of Cities. They do not forget who their home rule heroes are. So keep that in mind, that we go after some of those resources, whether it's grants, whether it's finding new staff, whether it's supporting the chief on something that maybe the Florida Police Chiefs Association is too big to tackle. Maybe there's something the League of Cities can do for us in that regard. I'm just throwing out ideas because the brainstorming was incredible earlier during the strategic planning meeting. So that is my legislative update. And Mayor, if it's okay with you, I have just a few bullet comments about the strategic planning conversation, if that's okay, how it
Sure.
relates to me. Okay, I felt like I would be remiss after that brain trust sharing. I learned a lot too, so I was very grateful for that. Right out of the gate, 3 out of the 5 of you mentioned beaches and sand and grants, and for the public, that area of policy is one of the most expensive, and it usually, sometimes when there's an emergency, it's never a low ticket item. It's usually a big ticket item, so your concerns are well placed. Mr. Wader, right out of the gate in public comment, mentioned cost share from the residents in a previous instance in which it was discussed but not necessarily landed. I mentioned that to put this on your radar, and I know Heidi's been in previous positions where this has probably come up. Grants have usually either a cost match mandate or a cost share mandate, usually. If there is a motivation in your community for people to be contributing to an emergency or an infrastructure item, or maybe the resilient action plan when things get going with that and we're filling in blanks, just keep in mind the cost match, cost share. Where will that come from? Will it come from the reserves that the former mayor wants to address in the rainy day fund? Will it come from a new line item? So that, and I say that because sometimes I have seen, and I forgot about it till I was sitting in the audience listening to these comments. We get through the grant process, we've identified the right bucket, we've made the right friends who are gonna review that, we understand how the ranking is gonna happen, we think we're in good stead. And then all of a sudden, someone didn't catch that it's cost share, cost match, how much. Now we gotta grapple. Now we gotta grapple when we maybe didn't have to. So just keep that mosaic of conversation in mind, not just for beaches and for what the good resident brought forward, which I was not even on my radar, frankly, of homeowner contribution for cost share or cost match, whether that's impact fees, potentially other things that are going to come forward to you with the creativity. So I mentioned that because you will make my job easier when I'm trying to be creative to Heidi's needs for grant identification and grant writing. The second thing, very quickly, also very specific to beaches. You'll remember in my February presentation, I think it was, that we mentioned we're starting to pull down resources from out in the netherworld. And one of them was the American Flood Coalition. You'll remember we were going to have her on your agenda in March. We had to bump her because your agenda was so substantive of business in March. So she's coming in May or June. Why is that important? The American Flood Coalition is free. They lobby in Washington. They have friends in FEMA, and some of their best friends are FDEP. I've mentioned some of this before, but I've not used that language before. As it concerns the strategic planning session you were doing, I would love for some of you to try to ask Kate, who will be here at the May or June meeting. We're working on which one. She's the Florida director of the American Flood Coalition, happens to live in Southeast Florida, understands Palm Beach County's deep renourishment plan extremely well, as she is a beneficiary of it as a resident of Palm Beach County, coincidentally. is a former fellow legislative aide. We cut our teeth together in the legislature 30 years ago, starting out. She knows her stuff. If you can start asking her what her prognosis is on grants, on the future of FEMA, on the future of DEP, on the future of the Climate Resiliency Office at DEP, on legislators around the state and how they view these buckets, because they're relatively new and they keep increasing the amount available to local governments, but we haven't seen that dynamic yet where suddenly everyone's there asking for money. We've seen creative carving outs, but like Heidi is alluding to for you, this vulnerability study, when that hits, start thinking hard about creative ways to address those vulnerabilities. Because it may not be DEP, that the DEP climate grant buckets might have a line of grant applicants 3 miles long and funding for a quarter mile. So we might have to get creative and look at Department of Transportation. Is that how we raise the road that's being discussed? So there's going to be different lenses to look through with different state agencies, because, and I may be proven wrong, but I have seen this play before where something new and shiny in Tallahassee eventually creates a line 3 miles long, but then the legislature didn't know that was happening and they only funded for the first half mile. And then everybody is left empty-handed. So creativity, name of the game. And then when Kate Westner comes for American Flood Coalition, Heidi's looking at that material, but I can tell you from watching them in DC and Tallahassee, I mentioned in my previous presentation in February that they were the tip of the spear in creating these buckets of grants at DEP. She is the one to really brainstorm with and ask her hard questions while she's standing at this microphone. We may not get an opportunity for another year, but we will benefit, she and Heidi and I in the background, we will benefit from her deep subject matter expertise. But while she's in front of you, please use that opportunity in May or June to ask her the hardest questions you can on my behalf, and I'll deal with the ramifications with Kate later. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you. Great summary. Okay, Bert.
All right. Commissioners, Mayor, thank you for having us. So for any resident that does not know me, my name is Bert King, and I'm a civil engineer at Finley Horn. And due to the nature of the topic, I've also brought along with me Eric Ruggiero, who is a senior roadway engineer in our office. So today we're going to be talking about the Lighthouse Road. I know that in the budget for this year, we had a project to mill and resurface a portion of Lighthouse Road due to some differential settlement concerns on that stretch of roadway. Just to give a little bit of background, it was first identified in about February of 2025 that there were some differential settlement concerns along Lighthouse Drive. At that time, the town consulted with us, and we employed a geotechnical firm to take some borings along the lighthouse. And the determination from the geotechs was that there were stretches of muck, organic layers below the ground, approximately 7 to 10 feet below the road. And that muck layer tends to settle and compress over time, especially with the weight of the road and the traffic overhead. Based on that finding, it was recommended that we reconstruct a portion of Lighthouse Drive, but we were not necessarily removing the muck layer. The muck layer was 7 to 10 feet below the ground, which would be very difficult to remove without extensive dewatering and without taking the road out of service for an extended period of time, which would have severe impacts on the homeowners and access to their driveways. It was recommended by the geotech to install a geogrid, which is a membrane layer installed under the asphalt to help stabilize the road over time. It is not a permanent fix, but it is a measure that can help reduce the rate of the settlement over time. Now, since that time, the town consulted with Cummins Cedarburg to perform a vulnerability assessment. In February of this year, they presented a draft of the vulnerability assessment where they discussed the potential for raising of the roads at various locations in the town. Primarily Lighthouse, as that is one of the lowest points in the town, particularly near the marina. Based on this new finding, it is our recommendation that at this time, it might not be in the best interest of the town to reconstruct the Lighthouse Road at this time in the current state. It might be more worthwhile to wait for the results of the adaptation plan. From then, we can determine which portions of the roadways that Cummins Cedarburg is recommending to be raised. And once we have a vulnerability assessment and an adaptation plan on record, we can apply for funding. And if grant funding is obtained, then potentially the town may not have to come out of pocket for the roadway improvements. It may be able to be achieved through grant funding.
Is there a timeline on this dream?
So I'm not sure of the schedule for Cummins Cedarburg and submitting. It's my understanding that the vulnerability assessment should be submitted around potentially this month or next month.
Yeah, this is what we talked about in the last meeting. So the vulnerability assessment is coming up, and then we'll have the workshop to do the adaptation plan, which would be part of the final report in September, but we'll know what's going into it.
So it's not an indefinite pause that we're recommending, but at least for now, if we're only a couple months away from getting recommendations from Cummins Cedarburg, it may be worthwhile to put a temporary pause on the Lighthouse Road reconstruction.
I wonder if any of our residents that live along this affected area have a comment as to, is it getting worse and worse? I jogged past it the other day and it seems like it's getting a little more severe. Is it something that there's more of a sense of urgency, do you think?
Well, we've been talking about this for about 5 years. But again, it has been an issue and we're going to get out of our driveway fine. It's not like the Hoover Dam collapsing, but it is moving. You all know that. So I get what you're saying, and it makes sense because where you spend your money, but each delay, we're going to go down a little bit farther. You're right, and it's going down. We're going to get in and out of our driveways, but I can see in about 4 years, I'm thinking the same thing budget wise. It's literally, you're going to go through a budget thing in order to get your money it's about 5 years down the road before we can do something. That's how I'm envisioning based on what you're talking about with your studies, how long it'll take the studies to get, and then to get the dollars. So I think it's 3 or 4 years down the line. Is that a reasonable number? I mean, over the top, when you're trying to get the money from the government and doing the funding and you're saying the relating, I can't imagine this in less than 4 years.
I would agree that if we were to obtain the results of the adaptation plan by the end of 2026, we would apply for grant funding and likely hear results by the end of 2027.
I want to kind of clarify that. We'll have the adaptation plan results this month. The grant windows won't open until June or July. We'll be able to apply for grants and we'll know within a couple months of that. So it would be the end of 2026 that we would know if we have grant funding, just like with the Resilience Action Plan.
So if the vulnerability assessment comes back and says that we should be raising our roads, do you then need to come up with a new plan in order to do that? And how long would that take?
Yeah, so the next step there, we would recommend a stormwater study for the town to be conducted to determine that if the roads are raised, that you can still have positive drainage from the homes to the valley gutters. We want to make sure that we're not having any adverse impacts by raising the roads to the existing nearby properties.
Is that not something the vulnerability assessment would look at? If they are going to be recommending that we're raising our roads, would they not consider the runoff from that? I guess maybe we have to see what the report says. That's an unfair question.
Can I ask you a question? The original design,
Yes.
errors and omission insurance that we must have received from the designer should cover a design flaw. Agree? Well, you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree. We have insurance
Yeah, Bill.
through the original design of the roads. That the roads wouldn't settle. Have we put on notice? The designer. To engage with us. To see what the resolution is. And to notify their insurance company that they may be responsible.
Bill, at this point, I don't know that we really have anybody here that can address that as far as insurance goes. I'm not sure that we have something that would be able to take care of that. We use them to do a resurfacing for a portion, but
Can I argue a little? Can I argue a little?
That's me.
No. We have to put someone on notice that the original design is not working. And we have to notify their insurance company. I'm
all
sure
right,
we have.
Bill, if I may, at this point, that's not something we can really get into in this meeting.
Oh, no.
That would
I
be something
agree.
for us to
I
turn
agree.
around and
My
take at a
point
later
is-
point,
no.
but it's a good point to bring up. We can
Please
investigate
do.
that.
Please do.
Okay, Chip,
Whatever we do, if it takes some delay, that's fine. Unfortunate, but fine. But we should do it in a way that's optimal, based on the vulnerability study. It's not, the road isn't, it's right in front of my house. The road isn't so bad, you know, Bill.
Right.
That we can't live with it until we find the optimal solution.
Right.
And in regards to what Bill just said, Kimley Horn was the company that did the designing, the engineering designing on the roads. So if there is such a thing as that kind of insurance, Kimley Horn would know.
right, And-
Not you would know.
wasn't there then either, so, right, that'd have to be a research at a later, point here. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
We're open to any questions you have.
All right, Heidi, the, study, the results that we're looking at in September, where in these studies that are going forward, are we looking at the discussion about the elevation of the White House? Where would we expect to see something on
The
it?
first part, the VA, I know it's like we keep using acronyms and
Yeah.
words, so the first part is the vulnerability
Right.
assessment, and that is the one that should be done this month. And that's what leads to the adaptation plan project, but it's kind of very obvious when you read it. I would also like, from a professional standpoint, I'm not the engineer, but from the money management and just project management standpoint on behalf of town management, the idea that also we don't know what the adaptation, or I'm sorry, the vulnerability assessment, the one we're getting first, the VA is going to say. But we should be looking at the city or the town holistically. We're talking right now about Lighthouse, but we need to look at how it impacts all of our roads. Because this isn't just about fixing what is there that's coming out of the grant, it's about making the town resilient. So if there's an opportunity to make the town resilient by hypothetically raising all the roads by 3 inches, we would want to look at that holistically and not just jump ahead and peel this off. If it comes back perhaps during the VA and it says, look at all the roads, however, prioritize from west to east. And again, I'm being very hypothetical here. We will know that, but we don't know what it's going to say yet. I know there's going to be something, but I don't know specifically. My professional recommendation is to pause at least for a couple months. Let's get these adaptation or the vulnerability assessment in and then take it from there. We will also start looking for grant that would do everything, looking from the impact to the stormwater system to all of the roads. If this is a phased project, because we have to provide matching, usually for construction projects, you do have to provide matching so that we can properly budget for all of this. But if there's an opportunity for us to bring some money in for the project, I think it's worth waiting a month or two.
Absolutely, and as Butch pointed out, right now, the roads are still usable, and so we're not heat to the fire yet.
I don't remember who I was talking to the other day, if it was you or someone from the public or the commission, but we're not looking at a road that's perhaps vulnerable to a sinkhole right now.
Right.
So, that's the best way I can spell it out.
Good stuff. Thank you, Burge.
Thank you.
No other question, commission, right?
decision?
I think we've already agreed last month to pause it, so there's no decision.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bert. Ready for town clerk?
Last week I attended the wildlife lighting webinar. I attended the wildlife lighting webinar. When it comes to 16 Ocean, the wall has come down as of today. The fines will stop after today. The letters, there's been letters for code enforcement going out regarding landscaping in the right of way. If anybody has any landscaping in the right of way, they keep it out of the way of traffic and of the storm drains. That's all I have.
Thank you. Chief? Lieutenant. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Commissioner, Mayor, Vice Mayor, the town manager, and our town clerk. I came here today to wish you all well. I'm retiring, as you know, and I just wanted to say that it was a real great opportunity for me. I feel blessed, honored, and privileged to have worked here for the last 7 and almost 8 years. Part-time at first, detective here, detective sergeant, lieutenant, interim chief for a little while. I leave you in very good hands. I've been through a lot in the last 8 years here. As some of you know, me, I did patrol at Beach Club. The previous administrations, I thank Chief John Pruitt for hiring me almost 8 years ago. And I welcome Chief McAllister to JIC, and I'm very happy to be retiring now. My last law enforcement job, I said, was going to be this JIC, Jupiter Inlet Colony. I came here as a young child to the Beach Club. My aunt and uncle lived in Tequester and they were members. So when it was a one-story building, I don't remember too much of it. It was a long time ago. But I feel connected to this place, always will. I feel blessed that Heidi and Brian are going to keep me on part-time, just in case you have disasters. Last time I retired, 2 different places. I wasn't working and I had 2 hurricanes that I tried to escape and they followed me. So they're gonna keep me on part-time, just in case. Thank you very much for the time that I've been here. Really appreciate it. It's truly, you know, what do you call it? A blessing, but a sadness too. But my wife and I are opening a gift shop in Pop City, the Crafty Crane Cottage. Grand opening next Saturday. So I got a lot of work to do. So if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna get at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciated all your dedicated time to us, Bob.
Thank you.
Matt?
Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry.
Chief McAllister just has a call.
Oh, I'm sorry, of course.
Thank you, and I'm real proud of Bob and the work he's done here. He's really set us up for success as we move forward. Moving along, the monthly report was sent out to the commission. We do have an agenda item to go into an MOU with DRC Emergency Services, and what that is to allow us to have more than one contractor to do emergency debris removal in the event that there's a storm. We can have 2 in, or if one can't come in, we do have somebody else that we can rely on. I'd ask the commission to approve that tonight. I think it's in the town's best interest. Looking at a few of the things we're doing in the police department, we had a report of a missing child this month, and you saw there were a couple letters of recognition in there. The officers did an outstanding job getting to the house, securing the scene. Our new officer Austin came back to the police department, started working cameras to get views and make sure the child didn't leave the community. Jupiter, Tequesta both responded in a big way. And I'd be remiss to say our residents responded in a big way when we put out the alert. Everybody got out to the street and started helping. Fortunately, the child was found shortly after that, and you know, it was a good learning tool for the police department, and it's going to help us as we move forward in planning and looking at things in the future. In addition to that, the AED project is underway currently with the town AEDs, and the stewards are donating. Everything is in production, so we're waiting to get that. They came out and did site assessments, so they know where they're going to put the poles when they come in. The camera system, I should have all the quotes and everything for you for the next on the next agenda. I will say that the flock system that we use on the HOA camera, it's not working as we have intended it to work, and I've requested that Flock remove that camera and we get out of that agreement with them because it's not working the way that they said it would. The original intent with that was to allow residents to put their plates into that system and for it to ignore the plates and only give alerts when people are coming into the community that aren't on that list. So as it stands, it doesn't do that. It continues to take that information and put it into the system. That's not what we were looking for with it. And it's redundant because we have two flock cameras in the same location, and it's not worthwhile for the city to do that. The camera system we're looking at, there is the ability for it to do that, but it comes at a cost, and that's what I want the commission to look at and see if that's something that they agree with. But I'll have all those numbers for you, and everybody will be able to see that going into next month. And I'm trying to see what else we have here. I submitted an emergency operations plan to Heidi. I'm working on the addendums now, and what that does is it's an all hazards plan. So no matter what occurs in the community, we have the ability to respond and have redundancies and everything in place to make sure that operations can continue. And then finally, I submitted a request for Tequesta Fire to potentially come out to the beach club on May 18th, 19th, and 20th. And that's for them to do some technical water rescue and things of that nature that'll go in front of the beach club board next week for a decision. But that'll conclude my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
No questions. Very good. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
You're on that.
Okay, I don't think I really have anything at this time, but there are a couple topics that kind of fit well in with some of the other discussion topics, and I'll address those when we get to it.
Okay. Commissioner reports. Yeah. No? Okay, I did not a report per se. I just wanted to pass out a couple of thank yous. We had our beach cleanup a week and a half so ago. Appreciate everybody who came out to assist with that. I imagine right now the beach is pretty swept clean with all the water that we have coming up on shore. I also want to thank all of you all for having come out tonight. Some of you were here for both of our sessions, and we appreciate that. The involvement of the whole town is always appreciated in anything that we're doing here. I also want to, one final thank you is for the social committee. They finished their season with their last party for our folks as they were heading back north to go get away from us for a while. There are several people on that committee who basically at the end of this season have retired. Our committee chair and a couple of her assistants have decided that their 3 or 4 years of doing that was enough for now. So they have stepped away. So thanks to everybody that has been helping to make our community what we like. Public comments. Some of you were here earlier for our planning session. If anybody have any public comments, I haven't gotten any cards, so I don't know if anybody had anything they wanted to say. No. All right, then we'll move on. The consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. stepping up and for, our resolutions. If any of these resolutions, as we come through each of them, there is availability for public comment to address those specific items. As we get to it, I'll acknowledge if anybody has any. The first resolution, the rules of conduct and decorum. This is one that I'm kind of sponsoring myself. We want to actually formalize a, stance, if you will, on how our meetings, we want to have them proceed under the decorum that we would expect from our town. So we have built a resolution. I guess I should read that first, or is there, do we want to do any public comment first or go through the resolution itself?
I think maybe just go through the statement and what it is, and I can help out if you want it all, or.
Sure. So the resolution is of the Town Commission of the Town of Jupiter Colony, Florida, providing for rules of conduct and decorum during public meetings of the Town Commission and any other public meetings, providing for conflict, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Yeah, so this is something that I know the town manager and both the mayor were interested in, and it's something that's very common for a lot of municipalities. Most municipalities do have this for their town commission meetings and for their other meetings, and it basically just sets some ground rules for how people should behave when they're supposed to, to be recognized to speak at the meeting, the 3-minute time limit. The mayor can always, in his discretion, his or her discretion, go over that, stick to the topic of discussion. One thing I think that has come up here frequently, and it comes up in a lot of different municipalities, is people will make public comments and then expecting a response from the commission. And it just clarifies that certainly the commission or someone they designate can respond, but the commission certainly doesn't have to. And it also gets into, if there is a violation, and hopefully this is something that never comes up, it never happens, but it does provide a mechanism for the chief or another law enforcement officer, if it ever comes to this, to remove someone from the meeting. And the idea is these would just be some ground rules. There would be a sheet up on the podium, just so people are reminded when they go up there, and it's very common for a lot of different cities that have this. I will say, in speaking with the town manager and the mayor, I left it very general. I left a few things out. A lot of municipalities are amending these now. There was a case in late 2024, Moms of Liberty, where it was determined that the
Sarasota County,
the rules, Brevard, where it went too far, and it talked about not being able to address specific commissioners, and the rules also permitted an individual commissioner, if they thought something was offensive, to shut down the speech. And the court found that it was a violation of the First Amendment, and actually Brevard County ended up spending about $600,000 on that case. So I certainly did not want to expose the town to that kind of liability. So this is a very basic, just, if you want to speak, wait for the mayor to recognize you, come up to the podium, you have your 3 minutes, they don't have to respond, and that's about it. There was one concern that was on the violation of the rules, where it reads that the town's police chief or his or her authorized agent in attendance at the public meeting. I think the concern was taking that last portion out, because as you know, a lot of the meetings are over at town hall, and there's not always someone present, especially for like the building and zoning meetings. But literally there's an officer right down the hallway, or there's one outside that can be called in. And if it ever came to it, again, hopefully it never does, but if it ever came to it where they had to be called to remove someone, there's no problem with that. There's not an issue with them not witnessing the incident. So.
Good, thanks. It basically means to just kind of codify what we expect from our meetings.
And it's really for the public that hadn't maybe read this, it's basically the way we've been conducting things so far, right?
Yeah.
It's been changed.
Yeah.
Okay. It's codified.
Yeah.
Mark?
I was just gonna make a motion for approval, and then you can open up the public comment.
There.
Question, does this include any,
Follow the rules, Chip. It says to go to the podium, state your name and address.
Start the timer.
Yeah.
question? Does the code of conduct Does the code of conduct preclude any ad hominem attacks on members of the commission or?
No, we didn't get into that and the Moms of Liberty case. You know, I don't want to expose the town to any potential First Amendment liability and potentially get a $600,000 judgment against us.
Any other interest from the town? No? I'll call for a vote.
A motion in a second.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2026-05.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass 5-0. Our next resolution. 2026-06. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a simple, straightforward resolution. It's creating a procedure for disposing of surplus town property. This is something that came to our attention through the OIG audit as well as best practices. It's not something we've had on the books. On the other side of this, we have started in Town Hall a property control list. There had been one done many years ago, but it's not updated. So through our police department, we're currently going through and inventorying everything, but we also have a lot of old monitors and old electronics in our back room. And before we dispose of any of this, and especially in light of the recent audit on the town, we want to make sure that we're doing it transparently and with the commission's understanding of how we will do these things going forward. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Commission, public?
Make a motion to approve. Resolution 2026-06, approving procedures for disposing of surplus town property.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Moving on, resolution 2026-07. Again,
Thank you. So this is continuing to get our house in order. The employee handbook was last authored in 2013. There were minor changes made in 2023. It was actually Lieutenant Beckman made them to comply with some grant requirements. However, it didn't come in front of the commission. I don't know if the 2013 went in front of the commission. However, I think it's best policy. So you know what we're putting there in front of our employees, as well as this could have financial impacts to the town, but be it the payout of PTO, the way we handle our retirement system or other related items. This comes from a variety of sources. It was originally started when I first got here by our HR consultant, Sherry Resnick. I picked it up and completed it, and then Matt's firm went through it with a fine-tooth comb. We would like to have this approved, and then we would have all current employees sign this manual, and this is what we would govern ourselves by.
okay. Yeah, I don't read the resolution itself. Is that required?
Just the title.
Just the title?
I
So-
think
I
also,
had just a comment, something I think we need to address is, we have a 27-year-old, new
Right.
police officer who they may be getting pregnant. Are there accommodations for paternity, or maybe maternity leave in the future?
this was an oversight, and I thank you for bringing that forward. So we'll update the manual before we put it out to the employees to make sure there's a maternity and paternity policy if the commission is okay with that. But I would also, per our policy, point out to you, Vice Mayor, that is ageism, and there are many people can be giving birth, adopting, or expanding their families.
And then I wonder if Commissioner Soares had a chance to read through it, since that's her area of expertise nationally, worldwide.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. So no, we drew at the same time at 2.2. I'm gonna add that to the crew.
Yeah, we're gonna change out one word in there so it's clear what we're doing.
Other than that, though, it's good policy.
Thank you.
The only comment I had was on the comp time, and I mean. A question on comp time and how it's tracked. Is it possible to give the commission visibility on the accumulation of comp time so that
you know, you look at it. And I read it Sunday, but, so I may not necessarily get it all correct, but. New employees essentially get 13 or 12 days a year, right? They accumulate it every week. We have 13 holidays. And I didn't see, what was the sick time?
Sick time is 13 days, and then the comp time is.
Is,
as
yeah,
earned.
as earned, so you need, you know, 13 and, you know, comp time. I think, and I'll yield to you, Janet, I mean, best practices is usually no sick time. And kind of give just a bucket of time off, and that's your time off, and that's all you get. That's what I have seen historically. And it, you know, we pay a competitive wage. It seems like even a first year employee can be, you know, between sick accumulation of comp, and I think we somehow should limit that. There shouldn't be a tremendous amount of comp time. Obviously, it's outside of commission meetings and maybe some parties. There's really not, but I just get a feeling that we need to get some visibility to comp time and or just give one bucket of time off, and that's your time off. There's no sick time. You take your time and plus the 13 holidays, which I think is very generous.
So I inherited the vacation plus sick time model here, so I purposely chose not to change it to the blended. But I'm open to it. I just didn't wanna make it look like we were taking away.
Yeah, but look,
You can put it in my pocket. I know it was, oftentimes when you have sick pay, California, certain state laws, they will have it where you have to pay it. Like, so they do break it out because there's an event that triggers the payout. So you could, you know, I would object if we bucket it together. We would explain that really it's not a takeaway, really just let them use it as they like.
It does create, just for friendly conversation, but then it does create the financial liability for us, because right now we only pay out the vacation, what we call PTO, we do not pay out the sick time. So that's part of it, is why we keep it separate. Regarding comp,
well, I guess, let me just, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not suggesting you give 13 days of sick time. That's a lot. So maybe it's half of that. Right, and that's all you get. The 13 days, and again, I don't, you know, everyone's different, and I'm not trying to classify it, but it feels like that's a benefit I have. I get 13 days of sick day a year, and I'm gonna take 13 sick days a year. They're not saying anybody on the town staff's gonna do that, but it sort of encourages. That's my only comment, and again, I would like the commission to have visibility to the accumulation of comp time by employee.
absolutely, so we can provide, the PTO and sick time are maintained through our PayWorks, our payroll provider. I do wanna, Yvonne did not point this out, but I do wanna say when I came here, it was never tracked through ADP. And they, but we know. And then there was this wild spreadsheet that had hours and hours of comp time. Within the last year, I put my foot down on that, and I told people they needed to burn their comp time because it was a financial liability to us, meaning we would have to pay out. Now our policy in place, which is incorporated in here, is basically you have to use it within 30 days. So you cannot accumulate it. And the idea is you gave up your Saturday to come for a party. You can make up that extra time by not being with your family, that whatever you earn 6 hours, you can take off 6 hours on a Friday within the next 30 days. It's a wash almost. So we can provide, as part of the backup, if you want, we can provide where everyone stands with their accumulation of time. We can also provide that spreadsheet of comp time. No one really uses comp time anymore since I put my foot down. It's not attractive anymore. We could bring this back next month and we could look at doing a blended where, so I'm looking right now, 1 to 4 years of employment, you get 2 weeks of vacation or PTO time. If maybe we bump that to 3 weeks and get rid of the sick, so it's one bucket, same thing, and kind of figure out the calculation and percentage for 5 to 9 years and 10 years and beyond.
And I'm only one commissioner. I don't know how everyone else is thinking. But again, in my view, kind of best practice, you get just one bucket and that's it.
And I know that's generally the corporate way to do it, yeah, the
Right.
private side.
I was actually, going to ask that, what is other
municipalities similar to ours policies with respect to.
I don't know what around here is, and I know when we fixed this early on when I was here because everything was being taken advantage of, and I don't know off the top of my head what everyone does. But I know in my experience, most cities, because it's antiquated and it's the way it's always been, is the two buckets. Sick versus, and the idea also is that you use your sick time. If you're on FMLA, you burn through that first, is generally how I've seen it, but I'm open to anything.
Is the policy written that way for FMLA that it runs concurrent?
We don't qualify for FMLA here.
Under.
Yes, yes.
I think it's a $2, it would work.
If I think just in an effort to kind of move forward here, why don't you come up with a couple of different scenarios and bring it back
Absolutely.
next month and we can debate it
Yeah.
a little bit more.
And I do have some of those notes, I just don't.
Yeah, and you can, and I'm sure folks may give you some additional feedback, and I'm sorry to drop this on you
No.
in the last minute, but that was just my thinking.
I also wanna, just real quick, I'm sorry, Commissioner, we were talking about FMLA, sick leave, all of that. The town does provide short-term disability to our employees as well, so that's part of that benefit calculation.
Right.
Yes.
And direction workforce, I just you've got your selection criteria spelled out. This is
What page?
1.9, page 7, page 8. I just sometimes it's not to you might want to give yourself a little more freedom and not necessarily designate the specific criteria and then do it based on the event. Just give yourself some.
Sure. Could we work offline on that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, Yvonne?
We can put we can put out on our listserv with the Florida municipalities and just ask what their policies are too and get kind of a folder. And see
Okay.
Thank you.
what other municipalities are offering.
That would be beneficial, thanks. All right, so we'll table this, waiting for your assemblage.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anybody, if you have any other further clarifications,
Yeah.
Heidi, offline during the next month, that'd be great.
Thanks. This is a big document and it's important. It says our culture, so, yeah, it sets our culture, so making sure that we go through all of these scenarios is important.
So we'll bring it back next month then. All right. Next vote, Chief. For the hurricane and disaster debris removal.
Sure, I can,
Go ahead.
you wanna go?
I think you already said it.
Yeah.
I mean,
We've already done this once. We
Right.
brought one person in. This is for redundancies in case it's attractive. This will also allow us to have checks and balances between the two vendors. These vendors are approved through SWA. So this is just piggybacking on the SWA contract.
This is what the chief was talking about earlier, so. Yeah.
And we don't, by bringing on a backup vendor, we're not paying them until something actually happens, right?
Correct.
There's no liability, more liability.
Correct, and we would be reimbursed through FEMA, most likely, hopefully within a few years.
Okay, any public comment? No, commissioners, anything else? No, okay, so for the cooperative purchase agreement for hurricane/disaster debris removal, reduction and disposal. You hear a motion for a vote?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5 vote?
Aye.
Oh, okay, very good.
She was. Email it.
Okay,
There she is.
we're ready?
There she is, yeah. Yes, so you asked us to come back with 3 quotes to do a financial advisor
Right.
for the refinancing of the loans. One of the questions that came up during agenda review is how could this be paid for, and it can be part of the loan process. We have on the screen available to answer any other questions you may have, Matt's colleague, Lori Smith-Lala, who can go through the process with you. She is going to be our bond counsel throughout this process.
Okay, Anybody question on?
There she is.
No?
Good evening.
Appreciate you coming out.
Absolutely.
Looks like we're ready.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
you did a great job. Thank you.
Okay, guess I didn't have any questions, Lori.
All right, so,
Awesome.
for approving,
Yeah, we need a motion.
yep. For approving a financial advice for purpose of refinancing neighborhood rehabilitation project.
So moved.
And this would be good with the lowest.
The lowest,
PSM.
Correct. All in favor?
Right?
Aye. 5-0.
And thank you for taking the extra month to get us a couple of bids.
Absolutely.
No problem. I'm sorry it took so long, but there aren't as many financial advisors that I've worked with. A lot of them have been retiring.
Uh-huh, okay. All right. The last thing on Heidi is the discussion.
Yeah, I want to preface this by, we as town staff, and I believe the town commission as well, are not here to defend or litigate anything that was found by the OIG. We found some irregularities in some of the practices here in town. We notified the Office of Inspector General, as we are required to do in May 2025. They decided to conduct an audit as part of their annual work plan of the town. I've had some questions from the public over the last couple weeks about this. This is not, for clarification, this is not a full investigation. This is an audit. So just like when our financial statements are audited, they do a sampling. As they said in their report, they did a sampling of 30 transactions and a sample related to travel and 30 transactions not related to travel, as well as finding a couple of items along the way. They gave us a report, I believe it was on April 1st, and their recommendations were for us to recoup as many of the funds that we can. The town attorney prepared letters that were sent to 2 individuals. They were asked to provide us with those funds by April 30th. To date, we have not received funds. We received a letter from one of their counsel related to public records requests. We are working on that public records request. It includes police reports, so we want to make sure we're redacting correctly and following all the laws. We hope to get it to them this week. And that is all I have. I think, and it was very purposeful. I think Yvonne's presentation kind of addressed what are we doing now and how can this never happen to the best of our ability now? And that's why we had her at the beginning of the meeting. But myself, Matt, Yvonne, we can answer any general questions you may have, but again, we're not here to defend or litigate the findings of the audit.
I mean, there's really not much we can do until it comes to April 30th. Right, so at next month's meeting, we'll either have an answer or no answer, and Matt, you'll be prepared to tell us what our options are
Yes.
under the law.
Yes.
Thank you. So. Hold on. So with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Make sure you signed all the resos,
Yes.
guys.
They're done.